Hello and welcome everyone. We will get started in just a moment. Hello and welcome everyone to today's webcast, Increasing the Competitiveness of the Research Enterprise in Comprehensive Institutions. Ex Libris, a leading provider of higher ed research solutions, including Pivot RP and Esploro, is proud to sponsor today's webinar hosted by Inside Higher Ed. My name is Dr. Sarah Branch, and I'm a research solutions specialist with Ex Libris and a past academic, and I will be your moderator. Before we begin, I'll cover just a few housekeeping items. We are using Zoom for today's webcast. You have probably noticed that you were automatically muted. Only the presenter's sound and video will come through. If you have any questions for our panelists during the webinar, and we certainly hope that you do, you can submit those at any time through the Q&A window, and we will address them at the end. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can also submit those questions to the Q&A, and the Inside Higher Ed team will help you out. And finally, in case anyone needs to leave early or would like to revisit the discussion, today's program is being recorded, and all registered attendees will receive an email from Inside Higher Ed with the recording at the end of the webinar. Now that we've covered all the housekeeping, let me walk you through the agenda for today. I'll begin by introducing our esteemed panel of speakers, and then each will take a few minutes to introduce their respective institutions. After that, the format will be a question and answer dialogue with our panelists, with time for open Q&A at the end. Again, please submit your questions all throughout the webinar as you're listening to the excellent responses from our panelists and you're going through the conversation. Our first panelist today is Dr. Mohammad Abu Salem, who is the inaugural Vice President for Research and Innovation at San Jose State University and the President of the Board of Directors for the SJSU Research Foundation. In his inaugural role as VPRI, he implements strategies that increase SJSU's competitiveness and expands external funding opportunities. He is also building the infrastructure to facilitate the offering and coordination of entrepreneurship support services. Dr. Abu Salem has over 29 years of technical, business, and administrative management experience, including several executive management roles in industry, innovation, and entrepreneurship in both the nonprofit sector and academia. At UC Santa Cruz, he established the Startup Sandbox Biotech Wet Lab Incubator and the SB Link Accelerator for UC entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. Prior to UC, he was the founding chief executive officer of Techterra Inc., a not-for-profit innovation support organization that supports startup and small companies across Canada in developing and commercializing innovative technologies. Dr. Yvonne Harris is the Associate Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development at California State University at Sacramento. Prior to joining Sacramento State, Dr. Harris was Vice Provost for Research and Scholarship at James Madison University. Dr. Harris offers administrative oversight of the university's centers and institutes and provides leadership and guidance of intellectual property issues, technology transfer, and economic development activities. She has extensive experience promoting economic development efforts in the communities surrounding the universities where she has worked, and she serves on various academic, community, civic, and industry boards and committees focused on economic inclusion and prosperity, overseeing research infrastructure advancement, research promotion, pre-award oversight, and managing indirect cost revenue of faculty research and scholarship. Dr. Elizabeth Lohm is the Interim Dean of Graduate Education and a Professor of Political Science at California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, or Cal Poly. Recently, the Division of Research, Economic Development, and Graduate Education launched the Campus Strategic Research Initiatives to fund innovative proposals that promise to transform Cal Poly and the surrounding communities. As part of the leadership team, Dr. Lohm is working to facilitate and support the research, scholarship, and creative activity enterprise at Cal Poly as central to and grounded in the teacher-scholar model. Dr. Lohm has served in various leadership and administrative roles in her 14 years at Cal Poly, with a focus on creating and sustaining interdisciplinary spaces for student and faculty success. As you can see, our panelists bring tremendous depth and breadth of experience to their current roles and to this conversation. We are very much looking forward to a lively and thought-provoking discussion. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Abu Salem to introduce us to the research enterprise at San Jose State University.
Thank you, Sarah, and good day, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I will share with you some highlights of San Jose State University. We are the public university of Silicon Valley and the first public university in the West. San Jose State was established back in 1857 as the first state normal school in California. We grew to become part of the 23-campus California State University system. We have about 36,000 students in 9 colleges with a strong collegiate athletic program. Our most telling ranking as an institution is being the nation's topmost transformative university based on our exclusive value-added scores for graduation rates, earnings, and student loan repayment. With a graduation rate of about 65%, we are 30% higher than universities with similar student demographics. As you can see, we serve a diverse student population with 3 out of 10 being the first in their families to go to college and 4 out of 10 being Pell eligible. San Jose State is ranked number 8 nationally by the Wall Street Journal for diversity in school environments. With all that, and as the number 1 most transformative university in the nation, we are the best at getting comparable student populations to graduation and into decent paying jobs. Along with that, we are the 2nd largest campus in California State University system in research activity with about $58 million in annual research expenditures. What is important to note about our research is that it combines both basic and applied research, with a lot of it being done in collaboration with our community in many areas. To give you an idea of where we have a strong presence, here are only 3 examples. One is our Moss Landing Marine Labs, which is a leading facility in marine science research and supports the entire CSU system. Also, our collaboration with NASA Human Factors is a great demonstration of interdisciplinary research combining psychology and engineering. And our Wildfire Research Center is crafting partnerships with federal, state, and private emergency and risk management organizations around its research. These are just very few examples, but we have a lot more going on our campus. In our Transformation 2030 strategic plan, we have identified research to have a very important role as a platform that helps us achieve our institutional strategic goals. To that end, only 2 years ago, we separated research administration from the academic affairs division to have its own administrative division with its own cabinet level leadership. This is a testament to our commitment to growing our research enterprise with very specific growth elements. We want to double the financial resources available to our researchers, so we are focusing on training our faculty, grow their grant award success rate, increase their capacity for more research activity, and engage with their colleagues in other disciplines and other institutions. We are also developing entrepreneurial support programs that will help bring our research products to practice. It's a big effort, but we have taken very good steps to make it happen. And I will be happy to discuss some of these details later in our discussion. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Yvonne Harris.
Thank you, Mohammed. And thank you all for joining us and for the invitation to have an opportunity to profile Sacramento State University. Next slide. As Mohammed had stated, we have a very large system-wide college. And so we are one of the 23 campuses. We were founded in 1947, and we started out as a Sacramento teaching college. We serve 6 counties in the northern end of the valley, and that is Placer, El Dorado, Sacramento, Ola, Sutter, and Uba. We are 6 miles from the capital, the state capital, and we are often known or called the Capital University, where we have 8 colleges, the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, the College of Engineering, the College of Arts and Performing Arts, the College of Education, the College of Engineering. Our total enrollment is around about 32,000 students, and they come not just from those 8 counties, but they come from a lot of areas around California. We're a fairly large campus and we're growing. We right now have about 7,500 total employees. And with the next year, we are planning on hiring more. We have last year, between 2018 and 2019, we had 8,400 degrees that were offered to baccalaureates, master's students, and some PhD students. Our faculty is about 4,000 in size, with the idea of hiring more next year. And last year, we graduated about 9,320 students, both including baccalaureate, masters, and some doctoral degrees. Next slide. We are known as the second most diverse university west of the Mississippi. We are also known as a HSI, which is a Hispanic serving institution, with 34% of our student population being Hispanic and 19% being Asian American. The Asian American population is also include Native Americans, Pacific Islander, as well as Japanese and Chinese Americans. We have a very interesting student population and age distribution. You can see there that we have almost 30% of our students are known as the non-traditional age, from 22 to 29 years of age. A lot of those are non-veterans, returning students. And so we do serve a very diverse set of populations. Next slide. We have started in 2018 to rethink our research portfolio. And we have increased over the years to receive about 26 million in awards. That is up by 6 million from last year. Our research expenditures have also increased. Right now, we're at 31 million. Last year, we were at 28 million of expenditures. Our awards have increased. We've become much more competitive with receiving state and federal awards. 70% of our award comes from the state. We have 86 sponsors, and 6 of those are federal sponsors. Even though we have about 150 faculty that engage in research, 77 have been awarded. That is up from 66 from last year. We receive funds in various categories: basic research and applied, developmental research training, curricular development, equipment, and student support. We have a substantial number of federal awards that support students toward graduation and postgraduate degrees. Next slide. So our research agenda took a turn, substantial turn, in January of 2018. At that time, the Research Affairs, which was that office that was responsible for pre-award submissions, was expanded by the president to include offices of research, innovation, and economic development. Right now, that office incorporates 4 offices: the Research Proposal Development Office, the Office of Economic Development, the Office of Innovation and Tech Transfer, and the Office of Clean Energy and Mobile Technologies. We also incorporated in that same time, the Colson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is established. It has raised some 10 million in donations to move the entrepreneurship agenda forward, and it is steadily growing. In 2019, there was a real win with the Ernest Chichanan Science Complex and Planetarium that was finished and is now operational. And in 2019, we participated in the Atlas Summer Research Experience, where we sent Sac State students to the Hadron Collider in CERN in Geneva, Switzerland. And we intend to continue that forward. We had a 2020 last year, we had a substantial land grant gift for Sacramento State Placer County expansion with Sierra College. So we will have a second campus further north to take on more of those counties. And this year we have lifted a public-private partnership that is substantial with 15 million coming from SMUD, called the California Mobility Center. And that is to establish early stage companies toward product maturation and to move some of their emerging technologies into the commercial arena. So we are really gearing up to move more research from the bench into the market. So we are really looking forward to doing more. This is just a small sample of what we have started to do already. Thank you. Elizabeth, I'm happy to hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning or afternoon and evening from wherever you're joining us. It's a pleasure to be here and talk with you about California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo. And just to shorten it, I'm going to call it for Cal Poly from here on out. Next slide, please. A bit about Cal Poly. Cal Poly is a primarily undergraduate university located in the beautiful central coast of California. And by primarily undergraduate, I mean primarily undergraduate. If you look, about 95% of our student body is our undergraduate students, with another 5% being stateside post-baccalaureate students. We run a handful of self-support graduate programs that aren't included in this count, but as you can see, we are primarily undergraduate focused. For the last 28 years, Cal Poly has been named the top public master's level university in the West by US News and World Report. We graduate about in 1920, we graduated about 5,600 students. We are a comprehensive polytechnic university where our about 1,400 faculty or so across 6 colleges, which are agriculture, food and environmental sciences, architecture and environmental design, engineering, liberal arts, science and math, and the Orfalea College of Business, offer over 65 undergraduate degrees and over 35 master's degrees. Next slide. Cal Poly is also a predominantly white institution that tends to enroll more male identifying students and tends to serve a younger student body. We largely operate on a residential model. Importantly for Cal Poly, our identity and pedagogy is centered in the idea of learn by doing. Undergraduate research and experiential learning opportunities are at the center of the institution and at the center of every decision we make. So for example, in the fall, we had about 700 to 800 students involved in face-to-face research projects on campus operating in the fall of 2020. And every summer we have between 500 and 600 undergraduate students involved in paid summer research programs. Importantly, these experiences are not typically grant funded. They are typically supported by colleges and offices through other support mechanisms rather than grants. Next slide. Great. Between July 2019 and June 30th of 2020, we saw an increase in submissions, both in the number of proposals that were submitted and in the proposal amounts requested. During that same period, we saw a small decrease in the number of awards, but a fairly substantial increase in the total amount awarded, meaning we started competing for larger grants during that period of time. Not surprisingly, our expenditures were down slightly in that same period, largely due to travel restrictions surrounding research as a COVID signal. And we expect expenditures will vary a little bit this year as COVID has taken a toll on our ability to conduct field research in particular. One of the things that's interesting and a common theme throughout all three of the campuses that you've seen so far is the breadth of research activity that we undertake. So we all have federal sources, state sources, not-for-profit sources, and for-profit sources. Partnerships with community groups and community businesses are a valued part of what we do. Next slide, please. So in 2019, Cal Poly was lucky enough to hire Dr. Renee Ray-Opera to serve as the inaugural Vice President of Research, Economic Development, and Graduate Education. As part of that hire, one of the things that Cal Poly did was, similar to San Jose State, separate the research enterprise, graduate education, and economic development from academic affairs. And it's less of a separation as more of a recognition that increased concentration in both areas can allow both units to better serve student, faculty, and community needs. As part of that change to a division, one of the things we did was reorganize the division itself. So we have always traditionally had pre and post award offices within the research enterprise at Cal Poly. But one of the things we added to that was thinking about how do we support research compliance? How do we support corporate engagement and innovation? How do we support student research? And how do we support graduate education? So within that restructuring, we restructured the division to have those offices and have those units, those subunits, particularly focus on those areas in an effort to increase the research enterprise and increase its connections to both the community and the university. As part of that process, we're working on 4 strategic goals, right? The first is ensuring that the breadth of the research, scholarship, and creative activity enterprise is focused on grand challenges or big ideas. That is, we're really thinking about how can research be transformative, both for students and faculty and staff, but also for the communities that we serve. We're looking to expand the research enterprise, again, looking at doubling submissions and expenditures. And part of that is making sure that we're counting thoroughly all of the research, scholarship, and creative activity resources that the university and communities are investing. And then on the back end, that we're being sure that we're measuring impacts and thinking about the impacts that the research enterprise has very broadly. We're also interested in thinking about establishing our EDGE, Research, Economic Development, and Graduate Education, as a leadership and developmental organization, meaning that we recognize the value that staff in the research enterprise have in supporting the academic mission of the university, but also the broader mission of the university in terms of knowledge production and applied research. And then finally, we're looking to align the economic opportunity and needs of the greater community with the work that we're doing, building a foundation for Cal Poly to be a source for partnership and opportunities through the research enterprise.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. I already have 1,000 questions that I want to ask you. So I see a couple are starting to come in through the Q&A. So please feel free to keep adding those there. For the next approximately 30 minutes, as I mentioned, it's just going to be a guided dialogue with our panelists. So hopefully we might even answer some of those questions you already have, but please go ahead and put them there so we can make sure to get to them at the end if we don't. My first question for all of our panelists here is drawing from your current positions and the experiences that you've had, both at your previous institutions and in your previous roles, especially Mohammad, since you came not from academia, what does it really mean to have a competitive research enterprise, both generally, but also specifically for comprehensive institutions like yours? And Mohammad, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this one.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, here's what I have to say about competitiveness. A competitive research enterprise means competitive researchers who bring impactful research outcomes to society. This is the knowledge, expertise, skills, and abilities of our faculty and our student researchers. This, by definition, tells us that we should focus on the quality of scholarship as our priority. In other words, As research administrators, we need to focus on providing the right resources and tools such that our researchers have the right opportunities to build their expertise, their knowledge, and competitive skills. This is consistent with our mission as a comprehensive institution, which is to enrich the lives of our students, to transmit knowledge and application skills to them, and to expand the base of their knowledge through research and scholarship. Now, the quality of the research and scholarship will be evidenced by our reputation as an institution, and that goes back to the very question. So the reputation of our faculty as scholars and the ultimate reputation of our graduated students as researchers, employees, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. This reputation will take many forms and will have a wide range of indicators, including citations in research journals, awards and recognitions, prestigious fellowships, funding, partnerships, and ultimately student enrollment and faculty retention. Of course, rankings will be a result of competitiveness, but I think it should not be the goal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mohammad. Yvonne, how about you? What does it mean to be competitive in your research enterprise?
Thank you, Sarah. That has always been a very interesting question. During my career, I've been at community colleges, R1s, and 3 comprehensive institutions. And having a competitive research enterprise really definitely does have an impact on not just the reputation and rankings, but serves the community as well. As a comprehensive institution, we serve as an anchor, a economic driver with respect to what we bring to the community. And so with respect to the competitive research enterprise, expertise in specific areas that are important for workforce development and the community and the industry becomes really important. And so probably more attention is being paid to revenue streams because they really do drive everything else. And so research with respect to the reputation of our faculty becomes really very, very important. Because if you have a larger reserve, you have a large alumni base, more industry partners, stable core of research scientists, drawing in multi-million-dollar funding and substantial IDC, we're able to drive a lot of initiatives. And when you're able to impact the economy and you're able to impact the value of life and wealth in your community that you serve, then your reputation increases. And so for Sacramento State and for this office, we've worked a lot with nonprofits, government entities. Our faculty are out there in the community working on various research projects besides moving their own research forward. But in particularly, having a competitive research enterprise means that we can introduce our students to the types of emerging technologies that are going to drive our economy for the next 20 to 30 years. And so that also means that you start to generate a stronger revenue stream. You start building stronger programs to drive student success that also attract high caliber faculty. You also drive strong alumni and donor base. And so once those things, those elements are working in synergy, you really start to build and drive the research enterprise that becomes longstanding and enduring.
It's fascinating to hear how far-reaching the impacts of a competitive research enterprise are. Elizabeth, what do you have to add to that?
So it's interesting. I was trying to think about what to add, and I'm not sure that I have much different to add, but I would like to emphasize some of the commonalities across our 3 institutions and how we think about the competitive research enterprise, right? And one is thinking, all of us emphasize this idea of regional and global challenges, that research ought to be addressing those impacts and impacts for our communities, both immediately surrounding and broader, right? That the impact of research is really about how can we solve problems? How can we address challenges? And that is a very broad measure. So when we're thinking about the numbers and the measures, thinking broadly about that. And that also comes down to thinking about when you think about and define the research enterprise, what are you counting as part of your research enterprise, right? So that it goes beyond traditional grants, but it's thinking about local economic partnerships, right? It's thinking about partnerships with local groups. It's thinking about how can we use and steward donor funds to support student development and community change, right? And the other thing that's interesting is that if you look across our three institutions, the competitive research enterprise is directly tied to our institutional mission, right? It's directly tied to student success and growth, to faculty development and growth, to staff growth, to community growth and development, and community change. And I think that's an interesting and unique place to approach this question of competitive research enterprise from.
Elizabeth, I think you make an excellent point about we often rely on things like just grant dollars, right, as the key indicator of competitive research enterprise or the rankings like Mohammad you were mentioning. But it's really fascinating to hear, all the different ways you are measuring the impact of your research enterprise across your campuses. And the next question that I had prepared was just why is it so important to have a competitive research enterprise? I think you've really addressed that already, but I do want to give you a chance to respond to that in case you had something you were really excited to say about. So Yvonne, I'll start with you. Really, why is this competitive research enterprise for somewhere like Sac State so important?
So Sacramento is challenged with neighborhoods that have been marginalized within the economy. We have a broadening, wide wealth gap where everyone is not able to participate equally in the largesse of the economy in our region. And so why is that of interest to Sacramento State University? It's because it's going to be important to draw industry and business and people who really want to drive the economy to our region. And coming into the region means that there has to be a sort of expertise resource to sort of address some of the real world problems that they have to deal with. And so one of the things that we have done as an anchor institution is that we have connected with industry partners, community partners, to sort of share with them some of our resources in addressing those sort of real world problems. And particularly, that is one of the reasons why we built a public-private partnership with industry partners to drive the California Mobility Center. It is the idea that this becomes a fermenting sort of entity to pull in startups, small businesses, to build up the business that we already have, but to have an innovation center where folks can not only have access to the workforce opportunities, but to also work with economic developers in the city in order to address those areas in which are keeping these neighborhoods from gaining ground economically and to take part in the wealth of growth of the area. And so building upon that research enterprise means that in health sectors, construction sectors, cyber sectors, IT sectors, that we can participate and build those industry sectors so that everyone can participate and start to close the wealth gap in these communities that have been suppressed for so long. And so these are the sorts of reasons why Sac State sees competitive research as something very important. And as you had stated, not just about the grant dollars to drive these things, but it is the will to make a difference, of the will and the vision in order to see these areas that have historically been suppressed to move forward. And this is why universities such as Sac State, and as well as all of us, serve as economic engines. So it is not just driving our own institutional agenda, but it is helping, standing alongside a community to drive our citizens further into having an opportunity to engage in the things that all of us need in order to prosper and to close generational poverty.
That's incredibly powerful. I think we think about research enterprises, like we said, in terms of those grant dollars or reputation. It's incredibly powerful to think of it as a driving economic engine to improve the quality of the community. Elizabeth, anything to add to that why?
Again, I think building off of that idea of creating a sort of powerful engine, it's the idea that students are actively involved in the research enterprise at all of our institutions, and that part of the idea of being an economic driver and a competitive research enterprise is its ability to transform the lives of students who want to transform the world, and that extends out that idea and the impact of the research enterprise beyond our institutions. And that's part of what we're doing.
Mohammad, I don't want to leave you out. Anything to add to the why?
Thank you. I just want to emphasize, and I agree with my colleagues that obviously being competitive as a research enterprise is very important, because the competitive research enterprise will provide the expanded opportunity to our students to develop the needed critical thinking skills and develop their analytical abilities so they are better equipped when they graduate and become employees, entrepreneurs, and community leaders of the future. Also, a competitive enterprise in so many ways supports the faculty in building a rewarding career as teacher scholars. It brings opportunities to them too. A competitive research enterprise is also a fertile ground, as Yvonne mentioned, for economic development, for innovation and entrepreneurship. Yet again, more opportunities for the students and the faculty to build and grow ventures that will help bring our research products and creative activities to society in ways that will allow us to all reap the commercial, social, and environmental benefits and improve the quality of life in our local and global communities. That needs to be the ultimate goal for everything we do here. So let's face it, the competitive enterprise is the catalyst for expanded resources and funding. I don't mean only in grants, but I mean also in industry and community partnerships as well. So all this means a richer learning environment for our students and a richer development environment for our faculty. And all this will ultimately mean expanded opportunities for our institution as a whole to more effectively translate our work to impactful public outcomes.
Excellent. We're going to, I think, come back to some questions on the budget and financing part of this. But, the next question, I think, is what probably many of the people who are watching right now are interested in, which is, what are the challenges, the greatest challenges that your institution like yours have really faced in trying to build and support and grow your research enterprises? As some of you have been brought in specifically to do that, Mohammad, some of you are really supporting this work on your campus. And we're talking about this both at the level of the institution uniquely itself, but also more broadly, perhaps some cultural challenges in academia. And then, of course, we have, acute challenges like the pandemic. And Elizabeth, I'm actually going to go to you first for this one. The greatest challenges you're experiencing in building and growing your research enterprise.
So this is a great question. And I don't want it to sound like it's always going to come down to resources, because it doesn't. But some of the challenges that we face is thinking about infrastructure to support a growing research enterprise. Right. So thinking about the infrastructure that you have inside your unit, right? Do you have the right people in the right places to grow and do the work that you want to do to complete that vision? And then there's differential infrastructure across the units with whom you work in the university. So some colleges are better set up at this point in time to support growth in the research, scholarship, and creative activity enterprises than others. And it's about how you think about and support growth for everybody. And across units and across colleges and across divisions. I think from the sort of broader academic side, I think interdisciplinary research is always a challenge. There's the sort of knowledge production side of it, the disciplinary side of it, but there's also how that maps onto different institutions and infrastructures. So ensuring that are you dealing with, if there are any pecking orders between colleges and disciplines on your campus? Are you thinking about what those questions look like? In terms of the pandemic, I think the pandemic is challenging. It created challenges for every campus. And campuses responded differently, but it's clear that there was an impact. So some research agendas shuttered and some transformed on a dime, and some figured out ways to continue on in a sort of modulated way until things return to a state that is more conducive to continuing that research enterprise. And I think research offices had to be flexible and adaptable enough to meet faculty and scholars where they were at during that period and figure out ways to support them internally and externally and advocate for them continuing critical and necessary work when they could, and then figuring out support mechanisms when they couldn't.
Excellent. Mohammad, how about from you? What are the greatest challenges you've experienced?
So I'm going to start off with the pandemic just briefly, but then I want to go to more broader challenges. And I agree, of course, with Elizabeth about the challenge with the pandemic. I mean, to be able to support our faculty and students to carry out the research while ensuring their health and safety is a very difficult task. I mean, let alone all the other pressures those same faculty and students are facing as parents, as children, as family and community members. So it's a very complex situation. But I'm pleased that, most, if not all, institutions managed to put processes and systems in place. For San Jose State, for the most part, we were able to accommodate our faculty and students' research in these challenging times. Now, there are still areas that continue to be challenging, like human subject research and field research. These are hopefully only timed now, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel. But broadly speaking, by the nature of who we are as comprehensive institutions, in my opinion, we have two major challenges that we continue to work on relentlessly. One is external and the other is internal. The external challenge is that however great the research products of our faculty and students may be, the outside world does not view us as research institutions. And therefore, they assume that our work will not measure up to their expectations until they are surprised time and again with the great work that comes from here. That's why the reputation is important, so that it can, as they say, precede us, or maybe precede our reputation as comprehensive institutions. Internally, because of our long history as teaching-focused institutions, it is not so easy to change the culture such that our internal stakeholders, our own faculty, realize the value and the need for the expanded and intensified research activities to serve our very mission. Again, the reputation will be helpful here, even internally, as it will help create peer pressure, if you will, among the faculty who will realize the gains from being research active.
Excellent, thank you. I think it's important to address some of those more cultural issues that you were mentioning here. Yvonne, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with Elizabeth and Mohammad with respect to the pandemic. For us, it was a stumble, as it was for the other CSUs, but I was surprised to see how quickly we were able to sort of recover from well, not quite recover, but to survive the pandemic last year. We depopulated our campus fairly quickly, but we really fought hard to bring our researchers back on campus to complete their research. Of course, those researchers that did human subjects and also field work sort of lagged behind. But when you take a look at the number of faculty that we brought back to do their research during the pandemic, it was quite surprising and phenomenal to me. But I wanted to lead from something Mohammad had brought up about the broader aspects. You know, research, having this research enterprise is fairly new for comprehensive institutions. We've only been moving in this direction for probably the past 8 and 10 years. And so we are not where the R1s are because they have a very large reserve in order to sort of survive these sorts of pandemics. But we are moving forward to the institutional challenges, one of which is around resources. Faculty at comprehensive institutions have a substantial teaching load. And on top of that, we have a very large undergraduate research program, as do some of the other CSUs. And so the institutional challenge to keep those moving, thriving, surviving becomes extremely important for us. So the pandemic, its impact was on our budget. And so our budget lines that support those things had to be reconsidered. Dollars had to be shuffled around. But, you know, as we start to swing out of this pandemic, we are moving those resources back. But you wouldn't know it from the activity of the students engaged in their research. It just kept moving. And I think that this is the nature, the hidden talent of comprehensive institutions, that we really do put our energy, our passions within undergraduate students in that research space, and allowing them to have the opportunity to really be experiential with some of the things that they're engaged in. The broader cultural challenge is that in this catching up with research, we have this this angst between being a teaching institution and being a research institution. And so that has been a major challenge for comprehensive institutions, not just for the CSU system, but if you look at comprehensive institutions across the country, you will find that same type of juxtapositioning between those STEM related and non-STEM related sort of research, creative works, and scholarship. And so working with faculty and working with administration to sort of level a playing field is one of the biggest challenges that we have, because our offices, which we resource faculty in order to do that research, are very limited in what we can and cannot do. We don't have the large reserve that R1s have. But what we do is that we work with faculty in so many other ways in partnering in order to move that research forward. So this has been a very interesting time, because I think the pandemic is going to cause us to pivot. We have to pivot because industry is going to pivot. And if we're going to allow or help build pipelines of our students moving into the industrial space, we have got to expand that research enterprise so that more and more students have the opportunity to engage in real world problems. And so this, to me, it isn't sort of a challenge, but an opportunity for significant change.
I love that phrase, the hidden talent of the comprehensive institutions, Yvonne. That's great. And I actually am going to pivot just to touch on the three of you. I know our next question was about what strategies or tools have worked well for you. And we've gotten a few questions. And since we are about 10 minutes out, I want to get a few of those Q&A questions in, and I think they're relevant to that exact point. So instead of that general question, I do actually want to go to one of our questions from the audience here, which is that a lot of institutions do want to grow their research, but as you're all pointing out, those available budgets are not increasing. And so if one institution wants to double that research budget, then others somewhere in the institution are losing that funding from their own budget. So the question is, should we be making more partnerships versus always competing with each other, especially when it comes to that budget? And if so, how?
I'll take first.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
No. What I was going to say is what we've done, that goes to the heart of some of the challenges that we have been able to face, because comprehensive institutions, as I stated before, are limited in what they can and cannot do. So what we have sort of pushed our efforts toward was to build collaborative coalitions. So right now we have the Anchor Interinstitutional Coalition that consists of Sac State, UC Davis, Sierra College, and Los Rios, because we feel the only way we're going to be able to move our research enterprise forward and have a significant impact on the community around us and the economy is to pull our efforts together and to build some broad strokes with respect to some of the strategic plans that we want to move forward, because there are common focuses among all of these institutions. So we've pulled our resources, pulled our talent, pulled our research together to have a much more powerful impact within the community. And so these are sorts of strategies that we're using. So, you can go after the more partnerships with industry, but to have a sort of very focused coalition that will pull industry in like a sponge in order to pull in more resources, more talent, for us has been very impactful and very successful.
Excellent. Mohammad, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. And I agree 100% with what Yvonne said and about collaboration and bringing in those coalitions, whether it's internal coalitions or with external institutions. That's very important to build and scale up your ability and capacity to take on bigger projects and become attractive, as Yvonne said. Now, there is part of the question that was asked, which is, how are we going to compete then for the money if we want to double the research enterprise? Are we going to take away from the teaching enterprise, if you will? And of course not. That's not the goal, and that should not be the approach. Now, there is going to have to be an initial investment done in the research administration process so you can build that energy and momentum to double up the research enterprise. Many ways to do that, but it's going to take deliberate investment in some areas. For example, look at your indirects that your institution bring in today. How are you using those indirects? How can you mobilize those indirects to encourage very strategic research projects? Look at the possibility or ability of creating a research development function in your organization to see how you can support strategically active faculty on landing bigger grants, more strategic grants that will bring in more money, more activity. Look at the efficiency of your operation. Doubling up your research enterprise hopefully does not mean doubling up your research administration organization, because that is not the model. You need to actually increase your efficiency such that you can double up the output, but hopefully with only 20% increase in your size of your administration or something like that. And lastly, actually two things, sorry. One of them is collaborate internally with the leadership on campus, college leadership, and see how you can use all those collaborators across campus to build the culture with you. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to the culture and the willingness and the ability of faculty to actually take on research. And this is the last item. For faculty to be able to do research, you will need to put some investment in relieving them from some teaching responsibilities if it's a comprehensive institution and their focus is on teaching. And we have that program in the CSU. If at San Jose specifically, we do have a relief program that allows faculty to teach less classes so they can dedicate some of their time to their research, scholarship, and creative activities. It's a managed process whereby faculty are granted the time based on the research agenda, their demonstrated scholarship, and their general aptitude for growth. And this program has made such a difference as it helped us grow the number of research active faculty substantially.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
And I would just add, there are also substantial opportunities to collaborate with similar institutions. So I think it's about identifying the places where you, for your campus, you've identified a core research interest or a core innovation, a core area you'd like to develop, and then taking the opportunity to figure out what other similar institutions can you partner with that are doing similar work, and to collaborate across those institutions. It takes an investment of resources to do that collaborative work, but there's also tremendous value in terms of the impact that that work can have.
So since we're talking about resources, one of our attendees here pointed out that you all mentioned an increase in your proposals, awards, and your expenditures, because of course the resources matter. So what strategies did you use, specific strategies did you use to actually increase those metrics? And just a quick time check, we have 5 minutes, so you each get 45 seconds.
Okay, I'll jump in real quick. So we took first a look inward to see what are the things that we could do. So and where is our biggest gap? And our biggest gap is in supporting faculty, particularly early career faculty, in helping them write better proposals. That was number one. So we have a research proposal development team that works with our faculty and helps them shape their proposals. But also, we also have a budget proposal team that helps to build their budgets. A lot of these proposals are lost because the budget doesn't fit the project. And so that was one. Also, as Mohammad had brought up earlier, we took a more strategic look at how we use our IDC. And so we use our IDC to resource faculty, and we negotiate with faculty and their deans for release time that allows them to work more on these proposals. And we connect them into the community so that they can build those partnerships with others so that we can go after these larger grants. Because as program officers of federally funded organizations have said, we're not interested in the Long Rangers. We are interested in the Justice League. So collaboration and partnership is the theme of the day. And this is how the power of comprehensive institutions working together and working with other entities can really have that huge impact. If all of our research enterprises are built, then that's a win-win for everybody.
Excellent. I see our other panelists want to jump in here too. So 30 seconds to each of you. Mohammad, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, very quickly, I want to say that if for a tactic or approach to do that also, if you have just enough funds that you can invest in intramural grants, then do that very deliberately. And for example, at San Jose State, we have 2 grants that we offer in a year, and that's gonna become our standard. One, small amounts of money, we call it a seed grant, and it is specifically focused on faculty who are starting, we want to kickstart their research activity. The second grant, we call it a Level Up grant, and it's for established researchers, and it is intentionally meant to take them to the next level. So in fact, in this grant, one of the requirements is for them at the end of it, they write an extramural proposal for a grant level that is significantly higher than the last one they received. And that's a way to push the enterprise forward.
And underpinning all of both of those ideas is the idea of changing the culture at your institution. And that takes the right amount of patience and push and advocacy, right? So it's about making sure that your institutional partners are on board with increasing the competitiveness and support of your research enterprise on campus, and then pushing out those resources where you identify that they can do the most good long term.
Excellent. Thank you all. I know that we had so much more to share. I wish we had a whole nother hour for our speakers. But I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and certainly a very special thank you to our panelists for your time. For everybody out there, if we weren't able to get to your questions, just know that we will share all of the questions with our speakers. They may choose to reach out to you individually. And again, today's program was recorded, and all the registered attendees will receive an email from Inside Higher Ed with the link. So we thank you again so much for your time, and we hope you all have an excellent day.